Welcome in, everybody. Really glad for you all to join us today. Super excited to talk about, AI and automation in and around the contact center and customer experience space. We've got two really great guests today. We've got Ken and Robert, both from the Inflow team. Ken is our VP of AI application and software services, and Robert's a director over our IVA development. Both are very experienced and well-versed in this area, and so really excited to learn some lessons today. First question, is AI sentient? No, just kidding. We're not going to go over it. We're not going to get that deep. I guess we might. I don't know. We'll see where it takes us. But no, in all seriousness, guys, thank you both for joining us. Really appreciate it and excited to dig into, this hot topic of AI and automation. Before we get started, we'd love for you guys to both just introduce yourselves to the audience a little bit. Tell us a little bit about yourself, right? Like, who are you? I know I gave title, but like, what do you actually do? And, how does your team ultimately help customers?
Sure, I'll start and then pass it over to Robert. So my name is Ken Workun. I joined the Inflow team as a part of an acquisition of a company called Net4 Systems. We came on board, I guess, last August. Part of that at Net4, we had been building a lot of expertise since really 2014. I think we started building intelligent virtual agents, initially a lot in the digital space, but then more and more in the voice. And as COVID hit, we really saw that practice explode as people had to work from home, as stores closed, as people relied on contact centers a lot more for their interaction with their retailers. We saw a real strong uptick in that line of business and really seized on the opportunity to work with Inflow and within Inflow as a way to help enable their customers with digital intelligent IA-based agents in the call center environment.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, Robert, what about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I've been working in the IVA space for almost 10 years now. Of course, through Net4 and now through the acquisition by InflowCX. So I've seen many transitions from basic key presses to keyword spotting to intelligent routing. Text-to-speech prompts being replaced by replacing pre-recorded messages and natural language, and now AI and the large language model. So it's exciting times ahead for sure, and how we tackle these projects now. So my team is actually directly involved in building the IVA. So we directly interact with customers, understanding the requirements, use cases. Come up with call flow diagrams to understand what will be the customer journey or experience within the IVA, and then we go out and build it, and yeah, so that's we're part of the entire process of building the IVAs.
Awesome. And yeah, for the audience, just really quick fun fact, you already heard process versus process. So we call these guys the A team. One, because they're the best. So A, if you think about the grading scale, but also this is our Canada team. So I think all, if not most of the teams based in Canada. So a little double entendre there, if you will.
Yeah, we spell AEO with an EH.
Exactly. Well, great. Hey, Robert, you just touched on something actually. I think you talk about the evolution of AI, and it's, it wouldn't be an AI podcast if we didn't talk about how things are changing. But I think you all have a really unique perspective since you're so deep in this area. And I know the pace of innovation has really accelerated specific to the contact center. I mean, heck, every day, but maybe just start with either one of you, maybe Ken, in the last year. How have you seen, like, what major changes have you seen? And where do you see things continuing to evolve to?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think AI in the last year has likely been the biggest changing technology that I've been part of in my life, and I grew up in the birth of the internet. I had literally had a piece of paper that had all the websites on it at one point. But AI is, it just seems almost on a daily basis there's a new company who has leapfrogged others and come out with a new specific application that will be revolutionary. So, the changes are really the challenge is keeping up with all of them. And I think at first it was all about how can AI help provide a better customer experience by taking a lot of those transactional details that agents generally have to deal with. What's my bank balance? I want to cancel my flight. I can't remember what my reservation is, or I want to change my seat on a plane, whatever that is. Originally, it was how do we make the agent more intelligent, and now AI with, in the last, let's say, 9 months, there's been the birth of the deepfake, and ChatGPT has all been about pretending to talk like a human. Originally, AI was really focused around image recognition and auto-driving cars. But with the release of ChatGPT, I guess just over a year and a half ago now, the AI around language and the spoofing of language and then the representing of language has really created a whole breadth of opportunities within the call center space.
Well, awesome. I know one of the other big, really large debates as it pertains to AI in this space, and you mentioned it a little bit, Ken, but like everyone always asks, like, well, hey, is AI going to completely replace humans? I think probably not, right? Like maybe in some capacity, again, makes things easier. But when I think more specifically than that, versus trying to boil the ocean with that question, when you all are working with an organization that is going to adopt AI, either for the first time or maybe continue their adoption if they're already adopting it at some level, what impact does that have on their labor strategy, I guess, is really the questions. And specifically, I guess, what are we seeing? Are we seeing there's a reduction in force in most cases, or would be curious on what you feel on that?
So there's definitely, ROI analysis that goes into this that includes headcount versus robot to replace. But we have not seen, because we're still at the early entrance of this, and I'm not sure with your experience of calling your 1-800 number Fortune 100 customer, and it just about seems like every moment of the day is call volumes are heavier than normal. And please be patient while we wait for the next available attendant.
Yep.
I think right now the bigger challenge is making sure that you can get the right information to your customers in a timely fashion without destroying your brand based on their experience with your call center agents or their frustration with how long it takes to get in touch with them. You can have the best agents in the world, but if you've been on hold for 40 minutes before you get to speak with one of them, you're already in sort of a sour disposition, as it were. So more than a cost reduction strategy initially, it's really about how do I provide better service and more timely service and use my agent's airtime for really those transactional things and relationship things that I want to have an agent speaking with a customer for, rather than all of the things like, could you please tell me what your address is? Could you please tell me, like, there's a fair amount of cost savings that can be derived just by reducing the friction of that call and being able to either address some things without talking to an agent or be able to focus the agent on much more difficult topics.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If I can, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to expand
Robert.
on Ken's ideas there. Is that as you mentioned, there's always a worry that these systems will replace agents and whatnot. But I would say right now, because it's so new, our customers are just looking at how they could actually use the technology right now. That's really the focus: is how could we make use of this? And so we're somewhat in a hybrid type of solution right now, where we have AI that's doing more of the that's focusing more on transactional operations versus relational operations. So transactional are things that can be handled, like things that can be done with a step, handle them step by step. So for example, I'm going to check my balance. It's a procedural thing. It's easy to do. It's a step-by-step procedure. While a relational operation is more, when a customer is worried about, maybe they booked a trip and they're not sure if they're going to make it because there's a storm, right? Mm-hmm. So agents are good at that. Automated system right now, not so much, right?
Okay.
So that's where, callers save time on performing some actions through an IVA. And then, like Ken mentioned earlier, that kind of alleviates the time for agents to actually do more complex work and resolving more complex problems that that an AI system right now can't do.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in terms of overall, going back to the earlier point, I didn't coin it, but I use it all the time. It's like AI is not going to replace jobs. People using AI will. So, consider it a tool, just like word processors. In theory, they replaced all of the typing pools of people that were typing up information and forced people to use Microsoft Office and Word. Those jobs didn't go away. They just became more meaningful and more rich in terms of the type of work that they were doing and the breadth of the work. So I think AI ultimately is going to unleash the call center agent to really do more meaningful work and less, data lookup tasks and, dealing with upset folks. They can rather deal with the emotional situations and the relationship management issues rather than the simple things that can be done quickly and more effectively with artificial intelligence, just because it has access to AI
Yeah.
and access to the data.
Yeah.
One,
That's a really good point. Robert, did you have one other thing to say there?
No,
Okay.
no.
Good.
yeah,
Gotcha.
one thing I will add too is there's a fair amount. We talk about AI as the front end, helping actually answer or pretend to be an agent. There's also a lot of AI in the call center that's going into assisting the actual call center agent. So again, if you think of a telecommunications company that maybe they have a cable plus a fiber plus a mobile, maybe they have some streaming service as well. Um, when you're going into the front end of that, and you're talking about different pricing schemes, etc., even the agents themselves are trying to figure out furiously at the back end where that information lies. How can they answer that question? What's the
Yeah.
bundling? What's the discount? What's the call cost to dial long distance to New Zealand? Those are the types of informations that AI assist can really make call center agents much more efficient and effective and handling more call volumes themselves rather than outsourcing the whole thing, the whole call to an AI agent. What you do is put an AI agent on the screen with the agent themselves, and its role is really just to listen in and give them access to the data in the back end that they need based on the contents of the conversation that's taking place.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I think of it like simplify it a little bit because obviously I'm not as smart as you guys. That's why I'm the salesperson and you guys do the really hard work. I think of it like company facing or customer facing, right? And
Yeah.
in my experience, I'd be interested in your guys' take on this, but like the execs and the people that are not as in the weeds get really excited about the customer facing, right? Like, oh man, this is a bot. Like, think about what we can do with this. But then I find like the business teams are actually a lot more intrigued in the company facing. Like you mentioned, agent assist. That's a perfect example because they understand all of a sudden, like, oh wow, we're a little more in the weeds, a little more closer to a lot of the processes. This would really be more of a driver. The customer facing stuff I think is more. I don't know. I'm an American football guy, so more like the wide receiver, like skill position players. But the company facing stuff, oftentimes in my mind, is more like the offensive line, like really doing the hard work and can um, have a ton of
Yeah, and it's
impact in the
also,
organization.
starting with Moneyball, there's a lot of analytics,
Mm-hmm.
going to the sports reference, but AI analytics are the next layer as well. So even after the fact, working and looking through some analysis, when you put AI into the call center, they can find things like, do you have a customer sat issue with a specific product type? So it can actually look through all of your transcripts, understand what are the major complaints, understand the nuances of those complaints, and give you a report that you could never do by trying to listen to every single unhappy phone call. No one has that ability.
Mm-hmm.
So AI can actually bring all of that together and summarize a lot of the analysis of how your call center is behaving, but also how are your products behaving in the field in a way that your individual agents aren't particularly good at consolidating all of their feedback and giving that feedback in a way that's meaningful to the product owners within an organization to say, this couch seems to have a quality issue with tearing, or if you're on the retail side, or if it's a hotel, maybe it's towels are an issue, or the pool isn't clean. Those are the sorts of things that if you actually do AI analysis on your data after the fact as well, you get much better insights into your business.
Yeah.
So there's really those three tiers. There's I'm going to be the digital interface between you and your customers. I'm going to be the digital interface between your employees and my enterprise data. And then separately, I'm going to be an interface between my enterprise data and my business owners so that they can make more informed decisions. And AI really is playing a role in all three of those areas in the call centers right now. And I guess the fourth one, which is a bit of a tangent, but fraud detection and fraud management is another big piece that AI is showing itself to be really good at.
Very interesting. We've mentioned something a few times, and I think it's really important because I find that a lot of companies don't know where to start, right? Maybe they have some automation, maybe they don't, but the thing I hear more than anything from customers when you really get down to it is, I know there's a lot out there. I have no idea what should be automated versus what we should handle. How do you all help an organization, sort of figure that out?
Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, well, there's some things that are good, that easier done in an IVA by an IVA, and other things that are not, right? I would say, for example, asking for a person's name. If you have an IVA that allows a person to maybe update their personal details on their account, that's not so great by doing it through an IVA, because understanding people's names is very difficult. Addresses difficult to understand. What else? So people's name, addresses. So those typical things.
Sorry, go.
Yeah, anything that requires, for example, understanding, email addresses are a bit difficult to capture as well. So those things we tend to, route the caller to an agent so the agent can take care of that and whatnot. Although we have alternate tools that we can send an SMS, for example, while the caller is on a call, and have them complete a web form on their cell phones while they're on the phone, and then once they're done, they press send, and then they continue their experience within the IVA to complete a particular action. There are some technologies out there that do that, but right now there's things like that are a little more complex within the IVA. And go ahead, Ken.
Where you get started, generally speaking, is you can do an analysis. So we can look at call logs or chat logs and fairly quickly get to a determination of this is the breakdown of the types of calls that you're seeing. And as Robert alluded to earlier, there really is a breakdown of which are transactional, which are relational. And we generally, almost every time when we walk into a call center environment, there are 3 to 4 use cases that are low-hanging fruit that there's no reason to include in it. I want to change my password, or I want to change my PIN, or I want to cancel a reservation. If you want to have customer service involved there, but if all they're doing is giving you a number and saying cancel it, or I want to request early check-in if it's a retail, or I want to check my account balance, all of those things, there's data in the back end. You need to make sure that they are who they say they are, and then you give them the information, and there's no reason for a human to be involved. So those are generally the low-hanging fruit, is finding those, let's say, 3 to 4 use case scenarios that are consuming a lot of time and don't need a human touch in order to have a good customer experience.
Excellent.
Yeah, and these systems are really still used. For example, the most important parts for customers is routing the caller to the right place. Because that's the ultimate key, is to you have agents with various skills, and you want the caller to go to the person who could actually help them out. So that's where the AI systems are really helping us out, because we could understand what are the use cases. It helps us identify what our caller is calling about, and helps us to build language models that when a caller asks and I need technical support for my camera, which with the model which has a serial number ID or serial ID or number or whatever of SX955. Well, it's actually going to an agent that understands that specific camera model, and that's what we do, right? Because we understand what needs to be understood. We send them to the right place, because you may have multiple agents that have or technical staff that are only specialized in specific camera types. So that's what we do. We use as much as possible the data that's been collected by the customer, and then use it to build these systems that help us direct the call to the right place.
Excellent. This has been really great, guys. I have one last, I guess, a story and a question, and I hope the story will be maybe a little bit of an inspiration, I guess, for the question I'm going to ask you guys. But I recently had a really interesting experience with a bot AI, right? That where my wife and I are expecting our first child, and we found out the gender via a chatbot. It was a really cool experience. It sent us a note and said, "Hey, I'm not a real person. I can't, there may be things I can't answer for you, but, if you're okay with it, I can give you, the results of some genetic testing and things like, and, some testing for certain deficiencies and things like that might happen. And if you don't want me to tell you that and you'd rather talk to your health professional, that's fine. But, do you want to opt in, basically?" And we said, yeah. And it gave us, the results, gave us a link to the detailed reports if we wanted it, but just kind of summed up what the reports meant. And then asked us if we wanted to know the gender. We said yes, and it told us. And, my wife's not in the industry or in the space, and she's always asking, "So what exactly do you do?" Or when people ask, like, "Oh, what do you do?" I remember looking at her after we, got over the initial wave of excitement and was like, "This is what we do. This is how this is what we set up for companies." So with that in mind, curious for you two, out of all the projects the team has done, what use case either stands out to you as maybe one of the most unique that you wouldn't think about? Oh yeah, this could be automated, or if there's something that just had a really big impact to the organization. Curious on that.
Do you want to go first there, Robert?
Yeah, either or. It kind of jumps a little bit on what Ken mentioned earlier, where there's a lot of data collected and whatnot, and what to do with the data that's collected. So one thing we didn't really talk about earlier is intent prediction. So really, basically, anticipate a caller's need, right? Why they're calling, and learn from the past times they've called, and see which options they call more often. And so it's not a cool feature, but I think it's actually it's not like a cool and greatest feature, but it actually gives that personalized experience of when you call in, and then maybe with a bit of verification, the system knows exactly what you may need. For example, if you're calling a clinic, for example, it may say, "Oh, it seems like your Ozempic prescription is due for a refill. Would you like to place an order now?" Or you calling your cable company and you have an outstanding balance, and then you could just say, "Well, hey, looks like you have an outstanding balance. Not a big deal. Do you want to proceed with making a payment now?" So it's anticipating what the caller needs to do without them having to ask for it.
Wow.
And that's where we're seeing things happen. You just received, you've called in maybe like half an hour for a support ticket. I'll use the same example as earlier. I called in for a support ticket for a camera that I have. Well, it knows, oh, it seems you called us earlier for support on your camera SX5000. Would you like to be transferred back? So again, it's providing that personalized experience. And as much as we like people to interact with these systems and self-serve as much as possible, it's actually anticipating what they need, which is actually the real service that we offer customers. And a person feels more, like the company actually has taken the time to make this experience really good for me. And because waiting in a call center queue is not great. So the experience that I get before getting there is actually a big part of the picture.
Yeah, you're
In
right.
fact, I'll give you my funny story, which I'll try to go short. But we were doing work with a large company in South America, and they asked us to help mine their intents, which is essentially look through all of our phone calls and figure out what the most common thing that our customers are asking us to do, etc., which is a first starting point for us often. And as we look through their log of all of their calls, we look from the bottom up that says, how does the call end? To try to figure out, okay, well, that's probably what they were trying to do is based on how the call ends, they got their needs met. And this particular company, who I won't name, but their number 6 call closure solution was go expletive yourself.
Wow.
So as we were looking into their existing call flows, it's clear that their customer experience of their call centers was, frustrating their customers. And there was, some issues around a tree, push 1, push 2, push 3, push 6, and then you end up somewhere that you didn't want to get to. You hang up, you call back, you get put on hold. So, I think there are some very interesting call center experiences out there that I think starting small is easy, and only diverting 2 to 3% of your calls while you get used to it. There's also a lot of work around the natural language processing on things like knowledge bases. So how do you take your existing knowledge base and train a robot to be able to answer questions that are on it? We're seeing a lot of those use cases as the first step towards dipping their toe in the AI call center space.
That's excellent. Well, Ken and Robert, this has been really, really great. I do want to leave the audience with one last thing, and that's that, at Inflow, we recently came up with an offer for, customers or organizations that, to your point, Ken, want to take that first step, but aren't really sure where to start. And it's called our AI Impact Assessment. And very similar to what you just described, Ken, we're basically going to analyze your interactions. Could be voice, could be digital, could be whatever. And then give you some, potential low-hanging fruit that's low risk, high impact to your organization, and, help you build out that AI strategy over time. If you're interested in that, please don't hesitate to contact us if you're listening and that sounds like something you might want to learn more about. But Robert and Ken, this has been really, really insightful. I've really appreciated and enjoyed this episode. And as always, I learned a ton here. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Look forward to doing it again.
Awesome.
Thanks, Austin.
For sure.
You bet.
Bye-bye.